Welcome everyone to another episode of Where You Darris. Today we'll be uncovering embryogenesis and development. So that's biology, MCAT prep. Everyone is welcome to watch and learn. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And don't forget to just give me your suggestions about what kind of videos or concepts you want me to go through. So today we'll be covering basically fertilization, we'll be covering cell development, cell specialization, and embryogenesis. So we're going to start fertilization. What is fertilization? Fertilization is when the sperm penetrates the ovum and then fertilizes it. So where does fertilization occurs? It occurs in the ampulla. Alright, watch out because there are two ampullas in the human body, okay? So the ampulla and the fallopian tube, alright? It's the sperm meets the secondary oocyte in the fallopian tube and binds to it. When the sperm binds to it, it releases an enzyme. It's called the acrosome enzyme to penetrate it. So it can't just go in, alright? It has to release an enzyme once it binds to it. And this enzyme is called acrosome. Alright, so then a critical reaction occurs when the sperm releases calcium ions because it wants to increase the metabolic rate. It wants to go in and penetrate and fertilize the egg. Alright, but there's a problem. What if other sperms try to attack the egg? This is where it depolarizes the membrane of the ovum and prevents sperms from trying to fertilize. Alright? But that's not the case in twins, right? You see twins, triplets sometimes, and then with dizygotic twins, it's two different sperms and two different ovums, right? So twins that don't look alike, but then you have monozygotic twins, twins that look identical, and it's two different sperms but the same ovum. So another sperm managed to penetrate and release its acrosome before the membrane got depolarized. Right? After fertilization, something called cleavage occurs, and cleavage is basically two parts: intermediate and determinate. So intermediate is basically where the cell develops into organs, okay? Your organs start to develop, okay, all your systems and stuff like that. Monozygotic twins, they emerge from intermediate cells. Determinate cells, on the other hand, is cells that are given different properties. So, for instance, you got cells for immunity, you got cells that are not specialized yet, you got stem cells. So, in a lot of examples, we'll be covering them later. So, after fertilization, a zygote is formed, and that's when cell division starts to occur. So, at the beginning of cell division, we have a zygote, then morula, and after morula undergoes blastulation. So this is a blastula, and morula undergoes blastulation to become a blastula. And the blastula, as you can see this blue part, is surrounded by trophoblast cells. Trophoblast cells. Then the blastula goes on and becomes chorion, and then it becomes a chorionic villi or chorionic villi, and then the chorionic villi becomes the placenta. All right, and the placenta is connected to the embryo by umbilical cord and two arteries and one vein. All right, the placenta is basically essential for a lot of things, including food, water, nutrients, and a lot of diffusion and transfer of nutrients between the mother and the kid or the embryo. Right, so blastula also undergoes another process to become a gastrula. Right, undergoes gastrulation, gastrulation. Right, to develop into a gastrula. Right, what is a gastrula? So a gastrula basically gives rise to three important layers. All right, you got the ectoderm, endoderm, and then you got something called a mesoderm. All right, so with the ectoderm gives rise to hair, gives rise to nails, mouth. Alright? Ectoderm is also important for another reason. It gives rise to neurulation. What is the process of neurulation? Neurulation is basically development of the nervous system or part of the nervous system. So that occurs by having the notochord and then the neural folds and then the neural tubes, and then this gives rise to a central nervous system, and then a neural crest gives rise to a peripheral nervous system. With the mesoderm gives rise to musculoskeletal and circulatory, excretory systems, and bones and muscles. And lastly, the endoterm, right? So the endoterm basically gives rise to epithelial lining, to the digestive tract, respiratory tract, and also gives rise to pancreas and thyroid. Okay, but I want you to think about stuff. Do you know how um, alcohol, cigarettes, all these outside factors, like, they tell you when you're pregnant, stay away from them? These factors are called tetragens, all right? They affect the maternal and the embryo's health and interfere with the development of the embryo, all right? So then we have cell specialization. So cell specialization is where specification occurs, then determination, where the cell is going by morphogens. All right. So basically, you got a cell, bland cell. Then it gets specified, right? Then it gets differentiated, then determined, right? So differentiation occurs after um, determines it's like where we're gonna send the cell. All right, so differentiation to make it different than the other changes function and structure to develop into a specific cell. All right, or into a determined cell. So this specific cell will do this specific type of job. All right, we also heard about stem cells. Stem cells are cells that haven't been differentiated and they're multipotent. They can basically differentiate into multiple type of cells depending on where you need them. Let's say you had an accident, God forbid, all right, and then you need a cell transfer. So they would have your stem cells, which can turn into different type of cells and divide and be there to fix anything. Right? But it depends if they get to your stem cells from when you were born. Then we have an important thing. How do cells communicate with each other? They communicate through as you can see, four different ways. So you got four different signals, and then can you tell me what you notice about these signals? Crying, 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 crying. So uh, tell me what you think in the comments, because I'm gonna say the answer at the end. So autocrine, same cell secretes signal. Right? Paracrine, cells is in the local area, so they can communicate locally. Alright, juxtacrine, signals of direct stimulation of receptors. So you have receptors sending to each other signals. And then endocrine is secreted hormones that travel through bloodstream and then to other tissues. Let's say you're at point A and then I'm at point B. You're so far away from me, so that's where endocrine comes in and then sends hormones through the blood, all right, to send your message to me. All right, there are also factors called inducers. All right, inducers are growth factors that promote differentiation and mitosis. So differentiation is promoted due to the fact there are inducers. There's also something called reciprocal induction, sequence of induction where one induced tissues induces the other. So let's say I have A, B, C. So A induces B and C is not activated yet or not differentiated yet. So what B does is then it induces C and then boom, C is active. Alright? C is differentiated. Then we have something called necrosis. Necrosis basically cell death through injury. So there's a lot of ways a cell can get injured. So due to the environment, due to ingesting something specific that could damage your cells. So that's necrosis. And then senescence is basically biological aging. We all age, all right? So the way um, our physical activity, physical being gets weaker is due to senescence, a reduction of telomeres on your chromosomes. So let's go back to the placenta. The placenta, water and amino acids move by diffusion gradient. So remember that the way the placenta moves to the embryo and through the mom is diffusion gradient. Fetal blood cells contains fetal hemoglobin that absorbs the oxygen, allows for gas exchange. The placenta is also an immunity barrier. It produces three hormones, all right? Estrogen, pro progesterone, and human chronic gonadotropin. All right, these are all for immunity. Umbilical arteries carries the blood from the fetus to placenta. Umbilical veins carries the blood from the placenta back to the fetus. So detoxification metabolism occurs by mom's liver, but nutrient waste exchange occurs in the placenta. But why can't the embryo do detoxification and metabolism? So that is due to the fact that we're going to discuss this in the next slide. So basically, fetus lungs and livers are really sensitive to blood pressure. So an embryo is so fragile, alright? So they're so sensitive to blood pressure. That's why there are shunts to direct the blood away. There are three main shunts for blood exchange. So you got the foramen ovale from the right atrium to the left atrium away from the lungs. Alright, so it comes back. Ductus arterius, leftover blood from the pulmonary artery away from the lungs. Alright, and then ductus venous is placenta goes to the umbilical cord and then inferior vena cava away from the liver. So we got two away from the lungs, one away from the liver. So ductus venous, you can just remember venous and then liver. Louis Vuitton, LV, venous and then liver, and then you got ductus arterius, so leftover blood from an artery away from lungs, and then the ovale is right atrium to left, away from lungs. So let's discuss the trimesters. Alright, so the first trimester is major organs develop a heartbeat around day 22, so that's when heartbeats usually start. Brain developed by the end of 8 weeks, and now we can call it a fetus. Then the second trimester moves within its amniotic fluid and grows 30 to 36 centimeters long. Right, so the kid begins to move, you hear a kick. Third trimester, antibodies transfer to fetus from mom. Later, growth slows in the end and has less room to move. And that's why I think in third trimester, there starts to develop problems if in the future, hopefully, you maybe want to go into medicine and maybe go into gynecology. They sometimes have problems with that because the baby doesn't have as much space to move and maybe could have the umbilical cord wrapped around it or something. So yeah, medicine is really hard, and I hope everyone really reaches their goal and commits to it and gets into medical school. So at the end of the video, I would like to thank everyone. Please let me know any comments or anything you want me to improve on, or any topics you want me to discuss. And thank you so much.